This Baseplan Presents video features how to set up standard builds for new and used equipment, focusing on the following areas. What is a standard build? Configuring standard builds against stock items. Setting list and sell prices. Add a standard build to a sales quote for sale or long-term rental.
Okay, so I'm currently logged into Baseplan Enterprise, and during this video, we're going to be going through how we can set up what we call a standard build, and how a standard build links into what we call a sales quote, which can be either selling equipment or it can be doing a long-term lease or rental as part of it. So let's jump into what the configuration looks like for a standard build, and I can explain a little bit further about its purpose. So if we go up to sales quotes and under configuration, and down here we have a menu called standard builds. So think of a standard build as you talking to your manufacturer, and let's just bring one up. So in this case, we're talking to Young Heinrich, and Young Heinrich are supplying us with forklifts that we're either selling or renting to our customers. And our customer says to us that they want a forklift with this particular specification for the forklift itself. So I would then talk to Young Heinrich and say, all right, can you please tell me what the build options are for this particular type of forklift? And we would already know this through the relationship that we would have with that manufacturer. Now, we can see here what we can do is we can set up the models and the categories and the components and the descriptions, and we can pull all those through and actually set up what we call standard builds for our certain types of stock. So when we're ordering stock from Young Heinrich in this case, this would be the components that build up a 2-ton forklift. Now, once we've got those components, we can also put through whether it's a mandatory item for the forklift itself, and also what the cost and list price is going to be for those components. And what that's going to do is let us build up all of our different item codes, and so our stock that we're ordering, and have those standard build options that come through as part of it. Now, once we've got that, think of the standard builds as fixed builds that are coming in. So you order a forklift and you want it to look like this. It turns up with that particular build option and straight from the manufacturer. The forklift turns up, and you might want to also do local changes to that forklift. So you've asked for the forklift to be red. It's got a whole bunch of stuff on there. You then also want to mind spec the forklift, or you want to add some special lights or whatever it might be that the customers ask for. If you don't want to pay Young Heinrich to do that, you've got the capability internally. So what we call that is pre-delivery. And so we can set up what the standard pre-delivery process is, that every time you order a Young Heinrich forklift and it turns up, this is the pre-delivery work that our team needs to do before we send it on to the particular customer. So let's have a look at how this can actually flow through into what we call a sales quote. And eventually we'll look at what we call the pre-delivery wizard as well. So if we go over to the menu structure again, so sales quotes, we click on the menu sales quotes itself, and let's bring up some data. And so if we have a look at this one, we can see the customer is Valaris Construction. We've got a whole bunch of data here that we can configure, and we've got our status on the top right, which I'll talk about in a second. But more importantly, down the very bottom, we have what we call our quote details. And we can have multiple quote details building up over time. And under each one of these lines, there's going to be a standard build and a pre-delivery setup for that particular quote. So think of it as we've got the quote, we've got all the lines here, and we know what the components are for those quotes. Now, if I double click on this, what this will do is it'll open up that standard build option that we looked at in the configuration in this quote detail. So I can see for this 2-ton forklift, these are the components that make up that order that we're getting from, it looks like Mitsubishi. Now, once we've got that, we can see all the cost and list price and sell price that are coming through, any margin percentages that we need to pull through or discounts. And we can also set up, as I said before, our pre-delivery. So remember, this is all the stuff that Mitsubishi is giving us. as part of the sale itself of the forklift. And then we have our pre-delivery. So these are the things that we want to do locally for this particular forklift. So we've ordered it from Mitsubishi. It turns up as specified per the standard build. Now, before we send it on to the customer, these are the things that we need to do locally as part of that pre-delivery process. Now, why all this is important is because by doing this, it's capturing all the costs of us building up the quote of a forklift, both from the manufacturer itself and also what our estimated costs are going to be for us to do the local changes before we give it to the customer. Now, we'll go into details in another video around how you can manage sales quotes, but once you have that quote built up and you convert it into what we call a pre-delivery, so you can see the status up here on the right is pre-delivery, it then allows us to convert that into what we call a pre-delivery wizard record. And this is going to allow us to capture the actual costs for that. So remember, we've got the costs that we've come from the purchase order, that's linked back to the standard build. We've got all the capturing of the costs for the parts and labor that are associated with it. They want to compare those to the what's actually been detailed on the quote. So if we go over here under stock, we have this module called pre-delivery wizard. And let's have a look at one with some data. So we can see here, we've got a 2-ton forklift again, and we've got the item code that this is originally linked to. And we can see that we can actually link the equipment and then the service job. So what this means is that once we link our service job, any cost that we associate with that service job will be added to the total cost of that standard build. So when we actually sell it to the customer, we can see what the cost of that particular quote was compared to the original quoted cost on our sales quote itself. So this is a very powerful tool for teams that are looking at streamlining their build process and their pre-delivery process when selling or doing long-term rentals for machinery. We'll do a whole session just on pre-delivery because there's a lot to this screen that we can dive into as well. If you have any ideas or questions, please leave a comment in the section below.